Leora didn't know the frail woman watching her from the high table was the Alpha King's mother. She didn't know that the old queen had been searching for someone like her for 11 years, following whispers and rumors across 6 kingdoms, chasing a gift most believed was only legend. She didn't know that the Alpha King was dying, that a curse wound through his blood like slow poison, stealing a little more of him with each passing moon, that every healer, witch, and sage in the realm had failed to save him. And she certainly didn't know that before this night ended, a single whispered command would drag her out of the shadows she'd spent 23 years hiding in and place her at the center of a deadly game she didn't understand. All Leora knew was that her feet ached, her stomach was hollow with hunger, and if she spilled one more drop of wine on a nobleman's sleeve, Mistress Helwyn would add another month to her indenture, so she kept her head down and kept pouring. The great hall of Valdrin blazed with light. 1,000 candles dripped from iron chandeliers, casting everything in gold and shadow. Long tables groaned under the weight of roasted boar, honeyed pheasant, and bread still steaming from the ovens. The air was thick with smoke, spilled ale, and the perfume of nobles who had never worked a day in their lives. Leora moved through it all like a ghost. That was the trick to surviving service. Don't be seen. Don't be remembered. Refill the cups before they empty. Clear the plates before anyone notices. Become furniture. Become air. She'd been doing this since she was 6 years old, when her world collapsed in a single week. First, her mother died of fever. Then her grandmother Alara was dragged to the village square and burned alive for the crime of seeing truths no one wanted spoken. And finally, her father, drunk, grieving, desperate, lost everything at the card tables and sold his only daughter to cover the debt. 17 years of indenture to Mistress Helwyn, a woman whose heart was as cold as her accounts were meticulous. 17 years of just a little longer and only until the debt is cleared. But the debt never cleared. The interest saw to that. Leora paused at a side table to refill her pitcher, allowing herself 3 seconds of stillness. Her reflection rippled in the wine, dark hair escaping its braid, brown eyes hollow with exhaustion. She was 23 and felt ancient. Keep moving. Don't think. Just survive until morning. She turned back toward the hall and nearly collided with Lord Vasek, a thick-necked man with ruddy cheeks and wandering hands. Careful, girl. His fingers grazed her hip, lingering too long. Forgive me, my lord. Leora stepped back, eyes down. Pretty thing like you shouldn't apologize. He leaned closer, wine-sour breath hot on her face. Perhaps you could bring a private bottle to my chambers later. I'll make it worth your while. Leora felt it then. The familiar cold pressure behind her eyes. The thing she'd spent her whole life hiding. Shadows curled around Lord Vasek's words, visible only to her. Dark wisps that coiled like smoke, marking the lie beneath his promise. He wouldn't make anything worth her while. She saw flashes of other girls, crying, bruised, discarded. She swallowed the bile rising in her throat. I'm needed in the kitchens, my lord, Mistress Helwyn's orders. She curtsied and fled before he could respond. Her gift, her curse. The thing that had gotten her grandmother burned alive in the village square, while 6-year-old Leora watched from the crowd, biting her tongue until it bled so she wouldn't scream. Truth sight, her grandmother had called it. The ability to see lies as clearly as others saw color. A gift from the old gods, passed down through their bloodline. A death sentence if anyone ever discovered it. Leora had learned to hide it, to ignore the shadows, to pretend she was just another dull, obedient servant. But tonight, something felt different. The air was charged, electric, like the sky before a summer storm, and someone was watching her. Leora felt the gaze like a physical weight, prickling across her skin. She'd developed a survival instinct for such things. You had to, in her position. Knowing when a drunk lord's attention turned dangerous. Sensing when to disappear. But this was different. This didn't feel predatory. It felt searching. She risked a glance toward the high table where the Alpha King's family sat. The king's chair was occupied by a man who stole her breath. Dark hair fell across his forehead, framing features that were almost cruelly beautiful. A strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of a winter forest, deep green flecked with gold. He sat with perfect stillness, barely touching his food, scanning the crowd with an expression of profound boredom. But it wasn't him watching her. It was the woman beside him, the Queen Mother, Vela of Valdrin. Leora recognized her from the portraits that hung in the servants' corridors, but the paintings lied. They showed a vibrant woman with silver-streaked hair and commanding presence. The woman at the table was a ghost of that image, painfully thin, skin like paper stretched over bone, eyes that burned with feverish intensity in a face that had accepted death. Those eyes were fixed directly on Leora. Look away. Keep moving. You're imagining things. But she wasn't imagining the way the Queen Mother raised one skeletal hand and curled a finger. A summons. Unmistakable. No. No, no, no. A servant didn't refuse a royal summons. A servant didn't survive refusing a royal summons. Leora set down her pitcher with numb fingers and walked toward the high table. Each step felt like walking toward the executioner's block. The crowd seemed to part for her. Or maybe she was imagining that too. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She stopped at the base of the raised platform and curtsied low. "You summoned me, Your Grace? Come closer, child." The Queen Mother's voice was a whisper, but it cut through the noise of the feast like a blade. "These old eyes don't see as well as they used to." Leora climbed the 3 steps and approached, stopping an arm's length away. This close, she could see the tremor in Vila's hands, the bluish tinge to her lips. The Queen Mother was dying. Not slowly, not eventually. Soon. "What is your name?" "Leora, Your Grace. I serve in the household of Mistress Helwyn." "Leora." The old woman tasted the name like wine. "Do you know why I called you here?" "No, Your Grace." Vila smiled, and despite her frailty, there was something sharp in it. Something knowing. "You're lying, child, I can tell. But that's all right." She leaned forward, and her next words were barely a breath. "I know what you can see. I know about the shadows." The world tilted. Leora's vision blurred at the edges. She knows. She knows. How does she know? "I don't. I don't know what you mean, Your Grace." "Don't waste what little time I have left with denials." Vela's hand shot out, faster than a dying woman should move, and gripped Leora's wrist with surprising strength. "I've been searching for you for 11 years. Someone with your gift. Someone who can see the rot hiding behind pretty smiles." Leora's breath came in short gasps. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but she couldn't move. And worse, she couldn't look away from the Queen Mother's burning eyes. "My son is cursed." Vila's whisper was fierce, desperate. "Poisoned by someone in this very hall, someone who smiles at him by day and is killing him by night. The healers can't find it. The mages can't trace it. But you..." Her grip tightened. "You can see lies, child. You can find the one hiding among us." Leora's gaze darted involuntarily to the Alpha King. He sat motionless, still scanning the crowd. But now that she looked closer, truly looked, she saw what she'd missed before, the shadows clinging to him. Not lies, but something worse, something feeding on him, dark tendrils wrapped around his chest like chains, slowly squeezing the life from his heart. "Stand beside my son," the Queen Mother whispered. "Find the traitor. Save him." Her eyes glistened with tears. "Please, he's all I have left." "Your Grace, I cannot..." "Cannot? Or will not?" The Queen Mother's grip remained iron despite her frailty. I'm offering you freedom, child. True freedom. Your debt erased. Enough gold to disappear. Start fresh. Become anyone you wish to be. Leora's heart seized. Freedom. The word she'd whispered to herself every night for 17 years. The impossible dream that kept her breathing through the endless days of servitude. How do you know about my debt? I know everything about you. Leora of Ashwick, daughter of Brennan the gambler and Mira the seamstress, granddaughter of Alara the seer, who burned in the village square 17 years ago for the crime of seeing truths no one wanted known. Vila's voice softened. I know you've been hiding ever since. Surviving. Waiting for a life that keeps slipping further away. Tears burned behind Leora's eyes. She blinked them back stubbornly. Why me? Surely there are others with gifts. Mages. Seers. People with actual power. There are no others. Not with your specific gift. Vila released her wrist at last. The Truthsight bloodline was hunted nearly to extinction 2 centuries ago. Too dangerous, the old kings decided. Too threatening to those who ruled through deception. Your grandmother was the last known practitioner. She paused. Until you. How did you find me? I've had agents watching for signs of the gift for over a decade. A servant girl in a border tavern who always knew when customers were lying about their coin. A young woman who avoided every dangerous man before he revealed himself. Vela's eyes glittered. The patterns were unmistakable. Mother. The voice came from directly behind Leora, deep and cold. She spun around, nearly losing her balance, and found herself staring directly into the chest of the Alpha King. He was taller than she'd realized. Broader. This close, she could smell pine and something darker, like smoke after a fire. His winter forest eyes looked down at her with an expression of mild irritation. Who is this? A servant, darling. Vila's tone shifted, becoming light and dismissive. I was simply complimenting her service. The wine is excellent tonight, isn't it? Leora watched shadows bloom around the Queen Mother's words, gray wisps of deception curling like fog. Vila was protecting her, lying to her own son. But the Alpha King's eyes narrowed. He studied Leora with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the floor. You're trembling, he observed. I'm merely overwhelmed by your Majesty's presence. Leora curtsied, keeping her gaze fixed on his boots. Forgive me, I should return to my duties. Stay. The command was quiet but absolute. Leora froze mid-step. Theron. The Queen Mother's voice carried a warning. Don't frighten the poor girl. I'm not frightening anyone. The Alpha King, Theron, circled around Leora slowly, and she felt his gaze like a physical touch, examining her from every angle. I'm merely curious why my mother, who hasn't spoken to a servant in 15 years, chose tonight to start. Perhaps I'm feeling sentimental. I am dying after all. Mother. Don't. Vila's voice cracked like a whip. Don't coddle me. Don't pretend. We both know I have weeks at most. And before I go, I intend to see you saved. The hall seemed to quiet around them, though the feast continued in full roar. Leora stood frozen between mother and son, caught in a current she didn't understand. Saved from what? Theron's voice was barely controlled. There is nothing wrong with me. Shadows exploded around his words, thick, black, writhing. The most violent deception Leora had ever witnessed. He knew. He knew he was cursed, knew he was dying, and was lying about it. Her sharp intake of breath drew his attention. Something to say, servant? No, Your Majesty. His eyes held hers for a long moment. Something flickered in those green-gold depths. Recognition? Suspicion? She couldn't tell. Mother, I won't discuss this here. We'll speak privately later. We'll speak now. With her present. Vila gestured to Leora. She can help you, Theron. She has a gift. I don't need help. You need exactly what she offers. The Queen Mother rose from her chair, swaying slightly. Theron reached out instinctively to steady her, and the gesture was so gentle, so reflexive, that Leora felt something shift in her chest. 1 week. Give her 1 week to find the source of your affliction. If she fails, you lose nothing. If she succeeds... If she succeeds? Theron's jaw tightened. You live. You rule. You have the future I've been fighting to give you since the day you were born. Silence stretched between them. The dark tendrils around Theron's chest seemed to pulse, to tighten. Finally, he turned to Leora. 1 week. You'll have access to the court, the council, anyone you need to observe. My man Rennick will ensure your cooperation appears voluntary. His eyes hardened. But understand this. If you're a fraud, if this is some scheme to get close to me, I will know. And the consequences will be severe. And if I succeed? Leora heard herself ask, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then I suppose I'll owe you my life. He paused, something shifting behind his eyes. Name your price, and if it's within my power, it's yours. My freedom. The words came without hesitation. My debt erased. Enough gold to start over. And your word that no one will ever come looking for me. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. Done. The royal wing of Valdrin Castle existed in another realm entirely. Leora followed Rennick through corridors that seemed carved from moonlight and shadow. Pale stone walls veined with silver. Tapestries depicting hunts and battles, and ancient wolves running beneath foreign moons. Candles that burned without flickering, their flames unnaturally still. These will be your chambers. Rennick stopped before a door of dark wood carved with intricate knotwork. He was an older man, gray at the temples, with the watchful eyes of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. You'll find clothing inside. A bath has been drawn. Someone will bring food shortly. I don't need... You need to look like you belong. His tone wasn't unkind, merely practical. Tomorrow, you'll be presented to the court as a distant cousin visiting from the eastern provinces. No one can know your true purpose. The traitor, whoever they are, must believe you're harmless. A distant cousin. Leora almost laughed. She'd be discovered within minutes. She didn't know how to walk like nobility, speak like nobility, and exist like nobility. What if I fail? Rennick's expression softened fractionally. Then we're no worse than we were before. But I don't think you'll fail. He studied her with those assessing eyes. The Queen Mother has been searching for someone like you for over a decade. She wouldn't have revealed you unless she was certain. He left before she could respond. Leora pushed open the door and stepped into paradise. The chamber was larger than the entire servants' quarters she'd shared with 11 other women. A bed piled with furs and embroidered pillows dominated one wall. A fireplace crackled with welcoming warmth. Through an archway, she glimpsed a copper tub filled with steaming water, rose petals floating on the surface. Her eyes burned with sudden tears. Don't get attached. This isn't yours. This is borrowed. Temporary. But she allowed herself to sink into that bath. Allowed herself to scrub away 17 years of grime and exhaustion. Allowed herself to dress in the silk nightgown left on the bed, soft as water against her skin. When the food came, roasted chicken, fresh bread, cheese, and fruit, she ate until her stomach ached, then ate a little more. That night, lying in sheets that smelled of lavender and something sweeter, Leora stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time she'd felt safe. She couldn't. 1 week. Find the traitor. Earn your freedom. Simple. Straightforward. Impossible. Because somewhere in this castle, someone was slowly murdering the Alpha King. Someone who smiled at him, bowed to him, perhaps even claimed to love him. Someone whose lies she would have to unravel without revealing her own dangerous secret. And beneath it all, a question she couldn't shake. Why had Theron's shadow-wrapped denial felt less like deception and more like despair? What was he hiding behind that iron mask of control? Sleep came eventually, but it was restless, filled with dreams of burning pyres and winter forest eyes and dark tendrils reaching for her heart. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video and subscribe to the channel. The court of Valdrin was a nest of vipers wrapped in silk and perfume. Leora discovered this within her first hour. Rennick escorted her to the morning council session, introducing her as Lady Leora of Ashwick, cousin to the crown through the maternal line. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but she smiled and curtsied and pretended she belonged. The council chamber was smaller than the Great Hall, but no less imposing. A round table of polished oak dominated the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs occupied by the most powerful people in the kingdom. And every single one of them was lying. Lord Corvath spoke of treasury stability while shadows coiled around his words. Lady Mareth assured abundant harvests while darkness writhed behind her smile. Even the young scribe muttered about accurate records while deception clung to his ink-stained fingers. It was overwhelming, suffocating, like trying to hear a single voice in a screaming crowd. Focus. Look for the darkest shadows, the deepest lies. Leora's eyes swept the room and landed on Theron. He sat at the head of the table listening to each report with an expression of controlled neutrality. But she could see what no one else could. The curse shadows had grown since last night. They wrapped around his chest like chains now, pulsing with each beat of his heart, feeding on something vital. He was weakening, faster than his mother had implied. Days, not weeks. He has days. The realization struck like a physical blow. Leora gripped the edge of her chair, forcing herself to breathe. "Are you unwell, Lady Leora?" The voice came from her left. She turned to find a woman watching her with sharp, curious eyes. Mid-30s, perhaps. Beautiful in an angular way, with auburn hair coiled in elaborate braids and a smile that didn't reach her gaze. "Merely adjusting to the altitude," Leora managed. "The eastern provinces are quite flat." "Of course." The woman extended a hand adorned with rings. "I am Seraphine, keeper of the royal household. If you need anything during your stay, you need only ask." Shadows curled around the offer. Not quite a lie, but not truth either. An intention to deceive waiting beneath the surface. "You're too kind, Lady Seraphine." "Please, just Seraphine. We don't stand on ceremony among family." Another smile. More shadows. "She's dangerous. Remember her face." The council session dragged on for another 2 hours. Leora watched, listened, and catalogued. Lord Corvath's financial lies seemed motivated by embezzlement rather than murder. Lady Mirith was hiding a lover, not a conspiracy. The young scribe was simply falsifying his work hours. Petty deceptions, mundane corruptions, nothing that explained the dark tendrils slowly strangling their king. After the session ended, Rennick appeared at her elbow. "Well?" "Everyone's lying about something, but I haven't found the source yet." Leora rubbed her temples, fighting a building headache. "The curse on him is getting worse, faster than expected." Rennick's expression flickered with something like fear before he controlled it. "Then we need to move faster. Tonight, there's a private dinner in the Queen Mother's chambers. Close advisors only. Can you observe without revealing yourself?" "I can try." The private dinner was an intimate affair. 8 guests gathered around a table laden with delicacies, the atmosphere deceptively warm. Candles cast soft light over silver plates and crystal glasses. Wine flowed freely. Leora had been positioned as a companion to the Queen Mother, sitting beside Vela and helping to cut her meat when her trembling hands couldn't manage the knife. It was a perfect cover. No one paid attention to a caretaker, but she paid attention to everyone. Lord Corvath laughed too loudly at his own jokes, his shadow steady and unremarkable. Lady Mareth picked at her food, distracted. A young lord named Bastian flirted shamelessly with Seraphine, who deflected with practiced ease. And then there was High Counselor Aldrich. He sat at Theron's right hand, an older man with silver hair and a grandfatherly smile. He'd served 3 kings, Rennick had told her. A pillar of the court. Unimpeachable reputation. But when he leaned close to Theron, offering advice on some minor matter, Leora saw it. Shadows so dark they were almost solid, writhing, pulsing, and reaching toward the king with hungry intent. And beneath them, twisted through them, the same darkness that wrapped around Theron's heart. The tendrils are connected. The curse flows from him. Leora's blood turned to ice. She forced herself to keep chewing, keep smiling, and keep pretending her entire world hadn't just shifted on its axis. High Counselor Aldrich, the most trusted man in the kingdom, the king's mentor and surrogate father. He was the traitor. He was the murderer. And he was sitting close enough to touch his victim. "You've gone pale, child." Vila's whisper was soft as silk. "What do you see?" Leora couldn't answer. Couldn't risk Aldrich noticing their attention. Instead, she reached beneath the table and squeezed the Queen Mother's frail hand once. Twice. 3 times. "I found him. I found him. I found him." Vela's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around Leora's with desperate strength. Across the table, Aldrich laughed at something Theron said, clapping the young king on the shoulder with fatherly affection. And the cursed tendrils pulsed brighter, drinking deep. Later, in the corridor outside Vela's chambers, Leora told them everything. The Queen Mother wept silently, tears tracking down her hollowed cheeks. Rennick stood rigid, his face carved from stone. And Theron. Theron didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react at all. "You're certain?" he finally asked. His voice was flat, empty. "The shadows don't lie, Your Majesty. The curse originates from him, flows from him to you. Every time he touches you, it strengthens. Aldrich held me when I was born." Theron's jaw worked. "He taught me to ride, to fight, to rule. When my father died, his voice cracked. He was the only one who..." He couldn't finish. Leora watched something shatter behind those green-gold eyes, watched the iron mask crack and reveal the devastated man beneath. And without thinking, she stepped forward and placed her hand on his arm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Theron looked down at her hand, then up at her face. His expression transformed. Surprise and confusion mingling with something unguarded and vulnerable that made her chest ache. "Don't be sorry," he said quietly. "Be right." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the corridor. And Leora was left with the weight of his broken trust heavy in her hands. Leora couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her borrowed chambers, watching the moon trace its path across the sky. The castle was quiet now, the revelry of the feast long faded. But her mind wouldn't rest. Aldrich. The name circled her thoughts like a vulture. A man who had raised a king, who had shaped a kingdom, who had smiled and advised and all the while fed poison into the heart of the boy he claimed to love. Why? What could possibly justify such betrayal? A knock at her door made her spin around. "Who's there?" "Theron." Her pulse stuttered. She crossed the room and opened the door to find the Alpha King standing in the corridor. Alone. No guards. No Rennick. Just him. Dressed in simple dark clothes, his hair disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He looked lost. Your Majesty, it's the middle of the night. I know. He didn't move to enter. I couldn't sleep. I walked past your door and saw the light beneath it. A pause. May I come in? Every instinct told her to refuse. A servant alone with a king in her bedchamber? The scandal alone could destroy her. But he wasn't asking as a king. She could see it in his eyes, in the slump of his shoulders. He was asking as a man who had just learned his father figure wanted him dead. She stepped aside. Theron entered slowly, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on the window where she'd been standing. You're not sleeping either, he observed. There's a lot to process. Yes. He moved to the window, staring out at the same moon she'd been watching. I keep thinking about all the times he touched me. A hand on my shoulder. A pat on the back. Every time he was feeding the curse. His voice was hollow. I trusted him more than anyone alive. Leora approached carefully, stopping an arm's length away. It's not your fault. He fooled everyone. Did he? Theron turned to face her, and the anguish in his eyes made her lungs seize. Or did I simply refuse to see? My mother warned me, years ago, said something felt wrong about him. I dismissed her concerns as paranoia. His laugh was bitter. She was dying, and I still didn't listen. You couldn't have known. I should have. His hand slammed against the window frame, the sudden violence making her flinch. But when he spoke again, his voice was quiet, broken. I should have protected her, protected myself. Instead, I let him into every corner of my life. Leora reached out before she could stop herself, her fingers wrapping around his wrist. The contact sent a jolt through her, electric and warm, and she saw his eyes widen slightly. You're not alone in this anymore, she said softly. We'll stop him. Together. Theron looked down at her hand on his wrist, then up at her face. A crack appeared in his composure. The pain didn't disappear, but something else joined it. Wonder, maybe. Or recognition. Why do you care? He asked quietly. You have your bargain. Find the traitor. Earn your freedom. You've done that. You could leave tomorrow. Is that what you want? For me to leave? No. The word came instantly, fiercely. Then he seemed to catch himself, pulling back slightly. I mean, your assistance is valuable. For the confrontation ahead. Shadows flickered around his words. Not quite lies, but not the full truth either. What aren't you saying? Leora pressed. Theron's jaw tightened. You see too much. That's rather the point of my gift. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. I suppose it is. He turned fully toward her, and suddenly the space between them felt very small. She could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, count the individual lashes framing them, could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell pine and smoke, and something uniquely him. I'm not good at this, he said quietly. Vulnerability, trust. My father died when I was 19. My mother has been fading ever since, and the one person I thought I could rely on has been slowly killing me for years. His voice roughened. I don't know how to let anyone in anymore. Then don't. Leora's voice was barely a whisper. Not all the way. Not yet. Just let me stand beside you. Let me help you fight this. And maybe, after it's over, we can figure out the rest. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather-light, reverent, and it sent shivers cascading down her spine. After it's over, he repeated, I'd like that. He left a few minutes later, pausing at the door to look back at her one last time. Something unspoken passed between them. A promise. A possibility. When he was gone, Leora pressed her hand to her chest and wondered when exactly she'd stopped thinking about escape and started thinking about staying. The next morning brought chaos. Leora was summoned to Vila's chambers at dawn, only to find the Queen Mother collapsed on the floor, barely breathing. Healers swarmed around her while Theron knelt at her side, gripping her hand with white-knuckled desperation. "Mother! Mother, stay with me!" "The curse," Vila gasped. "It's accelerating. He knows. Aldrich knows we've discovered him." Leora's blood turned to ice. "How?" "I was foolish. I confronted him last night, after you told us." Vila's laugh was wet, rattling. "Wanted to see his face. Wanted to understand why." "Mother, no." Theron's voice cracked. "Why would you—" "Because I'm dying anyway, my love, and I needed to know." Vela's eyes found Leora's across the room. "He's coming for her next. The truth seer. He called her an abomination. Said he'd burn her like they burned her grandmother." The room spun. Leora gripped the doorframe, fighting to stay upright. "He knows what I am. He knows everything now." Vela's hand tightened on Theron's. "Protect her. Promise me. She's the only one who can save you." "I'll protect her." Theron's voice was intense, unwavering. "I swear it." Vela smiled, and for a moment she looked almost peaceful. "Good. That's good." Her eyes fluttered closed. "I'm so tired, my love. So very tired." "Don't you dare." Theron gathered her frail body into his arms. "Don't you leave me? Not yet. Not like this. I'll hold on as long as I can." Her whisper was faint as a dying breeze. "But you need to end this. Today. Before he destroys everything I've fought to protect." The healers ushered everyone out, working frantically to stabilize the Queen Mother. In the corridor, Theron stood rigid, his face carved from stone. But his hands shook. "Theron. He's going to try to kill you." Theron's voice was flat, controlled, but something dangerous lurked beneath. "He thinks if he eliminates you, I'll never be able to prove his treachery. That I'll die, not knowing who murdered me." "Then we don't give him the chance." Leora stepped closer. "We move first. Today. It's too dangerous. He has allies. Guards loyal to him rather than the crown. If we move openly, he'll have you killed before we can reach him." "Then we don't move openly." Theron's eyes met hers. "What are you suggesting?" "Let him come for me." The words tasted like ash, but she forced them out anyway. "Let him think he's won, and when he makes his move, you'll be there." "Absolutely not." His refusal was instant, violent. "I won't use you as bait. It's my choice to make. It's suicide. It's the only way." Leora grabbed his hands, forcing him to look at her. "Your mother was right. He'll never stop. Not until you're dead and I'm burned and everything she worked for is destroyed. We end this now, or we lose everything." The conflict in his eyes was painful to watch. Fear and fury and something deeper, something that looked terrifyingly like love. "If anything happens to you, it won't, because you'll be there." She squeezed his hands. "I trust you, Theron. Trust me back." A long moment passed. Then slowly, he nodded. "We do this together. And at the first sign of real danger, you run. You don't hesitate. You don't look back. You run, and you let me handle Aldrich." "Together," she agreed. But they both knew she was lying. The trap was set within hours. Rennick spread whispers through the castle that the eastern cousin had taken ill and was confined to her chambers. Vulnerable, unguarded. The perfect target for a man desperate to silence her permanently. Leora waited in her room, dressed in simple clothes that allowed easy movement. A knife was strapped to her thigh. Theron had insisted, had placed it there himself with hands that lingered longer than necessary. He was hidden in the adjoining chamber with 6 of his most trusted warriors, ready to intervene the moment Aldrich revealed himself. The waiting was the hardest part. Hours crawled past. Afternoon light faded to evening gold. Leora paced, sat, paced again. Every creak of the old castle made her jump, every shadow seemed to move. Then, as darkness fell, her door swung open. But it wasn't Aldrich who entered, it was Seraphine. The keeper of the royal household glided into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Her smile was serene, lovely, and utterly false. "Poor dear," Seraphine cooed. "Lying here all alone, feeling unwell. Let me bring you some tea. It will help you sleep." She set a steaming cup on the bedside table. The liquid inside was amber, fragrant, and absolutely wrong. Leora could see the shadows swirling within it, dark tendrils of malicious intent. Poison, just like the curse feeding on Theron. "You work for Aldrich," Leora said quietly. Seraphine's smile didn't falter. "I work for the future of this kingdom. Theron is weak, sentimental. Aldrich will make a much stronger ruler. Aldrich is a murderer. Aldrich is a visionary." Seraphine's eyes hardened. "Now drink your tea, Truth-seer. It will be painless, I promise." "No." Seraphine sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. "I hoped you'd cooperate. Aldrich wants you alive long enough to witness Theron's final moments. But I suppose—" She moved fast, drawing a blade from her sleeve, but Leora moved faster. The knife from her thigh was in her hand before she consciously reached for it. She slashed upward, catching Seraphine's arm, sending the woman's blade clattering to the floor. Seraphine screamed. In pain or rage, Leora couldn't tell. The door to the adjoining chamber burst open. Theron emerged like a storm unleashed, his warriors flooding in behind him. He took in the scene, Seraphine clutching her bleeding arm, the poisoned tea, Leora with her knife raised, and his expression turned murderous. "Where is Aldrich?" Seraphine laughed, high and wild. "You're too late. He's not coming here. He never was." Her eyes gleamed with manic triumph. "He's in the Queen Mother's chambers, finishing what he started." Theron's face went white. "Mother." He was gone before anyone could stop him, sprinting down the corridor toward Vela's rooms. Leora ran after him, blood rushing in her ears, praying they wouldn't be too late. The Queen Mother's chambers were silent when they arrived. Too silent. Theron burst through the doors, Leora close behind. The scene that greeted them stopped her heart. Vela lay in her bed, motionless. Aldrich stood beside her, one hand resting on her forehead, dark energy pulsing between them. The curse tendrils were visible now, thick as ropes, flowing from him into the dying queen. "Ah, Theron." Aldrich's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I wondered when you'd arrive." "Step away from her." Theron's voice shook with barely contained rage. "Now." "Or what? You'll kill me?" Aldrich laughed softly. "You can barely stand. The curse has been feeding on you for 3 years. You're more dead than alive." He glanced at Leora. "And your little truth-seer can't save you. She can only watch." "Why?" The word tore from Theron's throat. "I trusted you. I loved you like a father." "Why?" Something flickered across Aldrich's face. Regret? Satisfaction? Leora couldn't tell. "Because your father was weak. Just like you." Aldrich's voice was cold. "I tried to shape you into the ruler this kingdom needs, but you're too soft. Too merciful." His hand pressed harder against Vila's forehead, and she whimpered. "Too much like him. So you decided to kill me instead. I decided to take what should have been mine from the beginning." Aldrich's eyes blazed. "I served 3 kings, gave my life to this crown. And for what? To watch fools and children squander everything I built?" He shook his head. "No. When you die, I'll emerge as the grieving counselor who discovered the real traitor. The council will beg me to take the regency. And finally, this kingdom will be led by someone worthy." "You're insane." "I'm practical." Aldrich smiled. "Now, watch your mother die. Then I'll deal with you." He raised his hand, dark energy gathering. And Leora moved. She didn't think. Didn't plan. She simply threw herself between Aldrich and the bed, her truth sight flaring brighter than it ever had before. The shadows around Aldrich became visible to everyone now, writhing and screaming in the suddenly charged air. "You want to see truth?" Leora's voice came from somewhere deep inside her, resonant with power she didn't know she possessed. "Then see yourself." She grabbed Aldrich's wrist. The connection was instantaneous, overwhelming, her gift reversed, pouring truth into him instead of drawing lies out. Every deception he'd ever told, every betrayal, every murder, it all came flooding back, reflected through his own mind. Aldrich screamed. The sound was inhuman, agonized. He tried to pull away, but Leora held on, channeling everything she had into the connection. She saw his memories now, the slow poisoning of Theron's father, the curse carefully cultivated over years, the countless innocent people eliminated to protect his secrets. She showed him all of it, made him feel every death, every betrayal, every moment of suffering he'd caused. When she finally released him, Aldrich crumpled to the floor, sobbing. "No more lies," Leora whispered, swaying on her feet. "No more shadows, only truth." Theron was there in an instant, catching her as her knees buckled. His arms wrapped around her, holding her upright, holding her close. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you." On the floor, Aldrich continued to weep, broken by the weight of his own sins. Rennick and the warriors secured him quickly, binding his hands with iron chains that glowed with protective runes. "The curse," Leora managed. "Did it break?" Theron looked down at his chest. The dark tendrils were gone. For the first time in 3 years, his heart beat without chains. "It broke." His voice was thick with emotion. "You broke it." From the bed, a weak voice spoke. "Well done, child." Vela's eyes were open, clearer than they'd been in months. Well done indeed. 3 weeks later, the kingdom of Valdrin celebrated. Aldrich's trial had been swift and damning. The evidence was overwhelming. His own confession, witnessed by a dozen warriors, combined with Seraphine's testimony once she realized her master couldn't protect her anymore. The council had sentenced him to death. He would hang at dawn tomorrow. But tonight was for joy. The great hall blazed with light once more, but this time Leora wasn't serving wine. She sat at the high table dressed in deep green silk that matched Theron's eyes, her hair swept up in an elegant style that Vila's ladies had spent hours perfecting. The Queen Mother sat beside her, still frail but growing stronger each day. With Aldrich's curse broken, her mysterious illness had begun to fade. The healers now spoke of years rather than weeks. "You're fidgeting," Vila observed with amusement. "I don't belong here." "You belong exactly where you choose to be." Vila's hand covered hers. "And I believe my son has something to discuss with you on that subject." As if summoned, Theron appeared at her side. He extended his hand with a formal bow that was entirely undermined by the warmth in his eyes. "Dance with me?" Leora took his hand and let him lead her to the floor. The music swelled around them, and they moved together with surprising ease, as if they'd been doing this for years rather than weeks. "Your mother is watching us," Leora murmured. "She's been watching us since the moment you walked into this castle." Theron's arm tightened around her waist. "She knew, even then, that you were meant to be here. Meant to save you, perhaps. Meant for more than that." He stopped dancing, though the music continued. Around them, other couples swirled past, but Theron's attention was fixed entirely on her. "Your week ended long ago. You've earned your freedom, your gold, everything you were promised. You could leave tomorrow. Is that what you want?" "You know it isn't." His voice dropped, rough with emotion. "I want you to stay. Not because of duty or obligation. Not because my mother wishes it. Because I. He paused, struggling with words that didn't come easily. Because these past weeks, having you here, it's felt like coming home, like finding something I didn't know I was missing. Leora forgot to breathe. Theron, I love you. The words came out fierce, almost desperate. I've tried not to. Tried to tell myself it was gratitude or proximity or the aftermath of trauma. But it's none of those things. It's just you, your courage, your fire, the way you see through every pretense and still choose to stay. I haven't chosen to stay. Then choose now. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. Stay with me, Leora. Not as a servant or a tool or a distant cousin from the east. Stay as my equal, my partner, my queen, if you'll have the title. You're asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to build a life with me, however that looks, whatever form it takes. His forehead pressed against hers. I'll wait as long as you need. Court you properly if that's what you want. But I needed you to know. I needed to say it out loud. Leora thought about the girl she'd been 3 weeks ago. Afraid, trapped, certain that freedom meant running as far as possible from anyone who might see her true self. But Theron had seen her, all of her, the gift and the fear and the fire beneath, and he loved her anyway. Yes, she whispered. Theron went still. Yes? Yes, I'll stay. Yes, I'll be your partner. Yes, I'll marry you. She laughed through her tears. Yes to all of it. His kiss was everything. Tender and fierce and full of promise. Around them, the court erupted in cheers, but Leora barely heard them. All she knew was his arms around her and the future stretching bright before them. The wedding was held beneath the autumn moon, in the castle gardens where late roses still bloomed despite the approaching frost. Leora wore white silk embroidered with silver thread, a crown of flowers in her dark hair. Theron waited for her at the altar, resplendent in formal black, his eyes shining with an emotion that made her breath catch. Vela stood as witness, tears streaming freely down her face. Rennick maintained his stoic expression, but Leora caught him dabbing his eyes when he thought no one was looking. The vows they spoke weren't traditional. They'd written them together, sitting by the fire in Theron's study, arguing over wording until they were laughing too hard to continue. I vow to see you truly, Leora said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Not just your shadows, but your light. Not just your crown, but your heart. I vow to stand beside you through storms and sunshine, to challenge you when you're wrong, to hold you when you break, and to love you in all the ways that matter. I vow to be worthy of your sight, Theron replied, his voice rough, to rule with justice and lead with compassion, to never trap you, never diminish you, and never take your fire for granted. I vow to spend every day earning the trust you've given me, and to love you with everything I am and everything I'll become. When he kissed her, the crowd cheered, but Leora barely heard them. She was thinking about the feast weeks ago, when she'd poured wine with aching feet and empty stomach, dreaming of an escape that felt impossibly far away. She'd gotten her escape, just not the way she'd imagined. Not running from something, but running toward love, toward family, toward a life she'd never dared to want. That night, lying in their chambers with Theron's arms wrapped around her, Leora traced the place where the cursed tendrils had once gripped his heart. What are you thinking? He murmured against her hair. I'm thinking about your mother, how she watched me from the high table that night, how everything changed with a single whispered command. Stand beside my son. Theron smiled. She knew, even then. She saw something in me I couldn't see in myself. She saw what I see. He tilted her chin up, pressing a soft kiss to her lips. Courage. Strength. A heart brave enough to face any darkness. Another kiss. My queen. My king. They fell asleep, tangled together, the moon casting silver light across their bed. And somewhere in her chambers, Vela smiled in her sleep, dreaming of grandchildren with their father's eyes and their mother's gift for seeing truth. Leora had stood alone at that feast, invisible and exhausted, praying for freedom. The Queen Mother had whispered 4 words, and Leora had found something better. She'd found home. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts on this story. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.